All right, it is that time again. We're having our weekly meeting. Hopefully, we will have people come in and join us. I'm really excited this week to see what all we have going on. As a matter of fact, here I need to create a split screen. That would probably help. I am working on getting this down. Let's see. All right. That way I can see some other things going on, because I did want to take some time and potentially chat about some topics if no one has anything in particular. So does anyone have any questions tonight for live chat? I know it was brought up to discuss kind of the vulnerability of the children who are, in particular, nonverbal, because we've heard several stories in the news lately about children with autism being abused in the schools. So that's one possible topic for tonight. Another one is autism in general. We can talk about that. There's the connection between autism and other developmental disabilities. Love that topic. I think it's incredibly interesting. Let's see, what else do we have? We can talk about specific learning disabilities. So again, there's lots of potential topics, and whatever kind of interests you guys, please let me know. As we have some people coming in, wanted to say hi, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Unfortunately, me and my family have been quite ill. My poor husband was quite sick over the weekend, and now the children are sick. So all therapy and everything else that have going on has been canceled. It's been crazy around my house. Okay, let me see. Also figure out what else we got going on here. Does anybody have any questions? Anything that you would like for me to address? Because for those of you who are on live, I really would much prefer answering anything that you have as a question you want to have answered, because this is really your time. Often things that I write about or I post in the group, I try to get from you guys. Can you hear me okay? I guess that's the first thing, right? Again, sorry, this is me being sick too. Hi, Chelsea, how are you? I hope you're doing well. If so, you're doing better than we are. We are not doing good at the moment, but thankfully I'm the healthiest one at the moment in my house. Shh, don't let anybody else know. Hi, Shwana, how are you? Guys, please let me know if there's anything that you want to talk about, because like I said, I do this for you so that we can discuss whatever interests you. And I want this time to be productive for you. Hi, Kate. How are you? Welcome, welcome to our group. Is there anything that you guys want to discuss? Thank you, Jeannie. I hope everybody gets better too. My husband had his man flu, and the children are having their flu. And Mom is still well, but usually Mom is the last one to succumb to being ill. So hopefully I can miss out, but we'll see, right? So is there anything you want me to discuss tonight? It's like I said, there was kind of the vulnerability of children with autism, especially those who have no voice in the classroom, right? And how to choose a category for a kid aging out of developmental delay. Oh, well, now, Kate, that's actually a really good question. And this is one of my favorite things that I like to do, and one of the things I often do. And why? Every time, practically, no one puts what state you're in. I love you all. But I will tell you now, I never remember what state you guys are in. I'm so sorry. I am not always fast on the uptake on that one. So if you'll put the name of the state that you're in, each state, okay, so let me explain about federal law first. So federal law is the law of the land. So no matter what the states do, you still have to abide by federal law, okay? But the state law can come in and sort of further define or further refine what the federal government said, but they can't limit what was written initially, okay? So they can't make it more restrictive, but they can try to help clarify the meaning. So this is why I like to really know what everybody's state is, because I want to go look for your state's definition of the different categories covered under IDEA, because IDEA has 13 categories in which they defined under the federal law. And so that's the minimum. And since I didn't prepare to talk about this, I don't know what they all are off the top of my head. I have terrible working memory, I have found out, for details. Good, thankfully, for stuff that I read, but details sometimes I forget. So I don't remember what all the categories are off the top of my head. But I know, like, for Arizona, where I live, we have at least a good 15 categories. Arizona added a few categories. So like one of the categories that they added that's not listed under IDEA is multiple disabilities with severe sensory impairment, MDSSI. And my son Joseph was categorized as MDSSI in this state. And that's because he met the definition for multiply disabled, which is the standard definition you see under IDEA. And then Arizona broke it out a little further, and they had the category of MDSSI when a child has impairment for either hearing or vision. And so my son Joseph is also visually impaired. And so therefore he fit that category. So that's why it's really important to know, like, what is your state's categories, and then what are your state's eligibilities. And then that's what you want to read. And then you as the parent should read through there and decide, you know, like what it is that you think that your child fits under. And then like what I do is I go in and I kind of make a case, right? Saying, I think my child fits this disability category, and here's why. And then you explain, you know, you use examples from the school, the data that you have, medical data, the school's data, anything that you got, and you just sort of lay out the explanation. So when my son was classified as MDSSI, that's exactly what I had to do. I had to look at the state definition. Matter of fact, thankfully it was a teleconference, and I was able to pull up state law and put it into the meeting because I didn't even know what the definition was. I had to tell them, and this is what happens, right? Like the team didn't even know. So when I explained to them what the definition was, they're like, oh, you know what, you're right. Yes, he does fit that category. Sure, we'll categorize him as MDSSI, and that will be his primary eligibility. So this is why I firmly believe parents, you have to be proactive. You have to educate yourself. You have to be proactive. You have to learn these things. And so that way when you go in, even though these people across from you, they may have PhDs and whatever other degrees, that doesn't make them necessarily the most knowledgeable people in the room. Just remember that. And definitely, by far, you are the most knowledgeable person about your child. Hands down. So never let the team intimidate you. Stand up for yourself and make sure that you know your law. You know your state law and you know your federal law. And so, and as a lawyer recently chided me, telling me that I can't give out legal advice because I'm not an attorney, they are correct. Just so you know, I am not an attorney, nor do I have a JD, but that doesn't mean I'm not a legal scholar. That doesn't mean I don't have the intellectual capability to read law. That doesn't mean I don't have the intellectual capability to understand law. And one of the fun things about special education law is as a parent, okay, so like I can't do this. I can't really represent you in a legal capacity, right? Because that would be a violation, and I would be representing myself as an attorney. Well, that doesn't mean that I can't inform you of the law, and then I can help you draft letters to give to the school with law. And also, that doesn't mean that I can't tell you the law, and then you take that information and you write and say and do, because parents are 100% able and capable and are allowed to defend yourselves, as represent yourselves in any kind of dealing with the school. So that's something that is a little different, and that was sort of pointed out to me recently at a conference that I attended, because the litigation lawyer was like, this is really different from what I'm used to, because in litigation, nobody ever defends themselves. It's always lawyers against lawyers. This is so different. It is. It's very different. And there's more at stake, and the parents care. And I guess that's really the big thing, right? Like, you guys care. So all heart is in it, because it's your child, and that means a lot. So that's when that mama bear comes out. Let's see. So hopefully, Kate, that helped answer your question about how to choose a category. So how to choose that category: know your state law, know what the categories are. You decide. You read. You decide. You pick. You lay out a case in front of all the team on what the eligibility category should be. And if you do not know what the definitions are for eligibility in your state, let me know. Put something in the group. I will answer it for you and give you a link taking you right to where the eligibility is. All states have it. Some it's more buried than others, but it's always out there. It's available online. Let's see. Yeah, oh, and Chelsea, I did see that Arwen's sick. I'm so sorry. I hope she feels better. So Shwana, she goes, yes, I'm struggling with trying to find the right ways to help my son. He doesn't have any interest in reading and only loves to watch Netflix and playing games. So I'm limiting this now. Any ideas? Actually, I do have some ideas. Interestingly enough, James, my son, who is hyperlexic, right? Reading is so easy for him. This kid in 3rd grade was reading college level material. He has the capability. That boy hates reading. He hates it with a passion. So I have a hard time getting him to read also. I don't know, because you didn't say, Shawana, where his reading level is. So my other children who also, they don't like reading, I don't know if you've ever seen, there are interactive storybooks. So again, depending on your son's age, an interactive storybook might be good. Potentially reading to him may be good, which I know sounds really weird, but like my children are 11, and we have been doing this for a long time. But my children are 11, and matter of fact, you may even hear, because I have an Amazon Echo in my house. And I set reminders, and you probably will hear one go off in a little bit, where it says like, all children to bed for story time, because we do story time. And it's a time in which we read to the children. And there have been studies that show children learn to read even just by listening. So there is value even for your older children to read to them if they're willing to listen. Another idea is audiobooks, because there are those who have a hard time reading. James, my hyperlexic child, he does have kind of a limited working memory. And so when he is reading on his own, he, like I said, reads so well. He reads fluently. He reads in an animated style, even like in a storytelling kind of style. But if you just asked him, what did you read? Reading comprehension wise, he doesn't get it. And that's because his working memory is so busy. I'm talking about you, James. You want to come here and say hi?
Oh.
This is my 6th son, James.
Yes, I was running a 102.5 fever this morning.
Yes, but hopefully you're all better now, right?
No, I'm not feeling that better. I mean,
he's not dying on me, though. No, we were just talking about how sometimes it's hard for you to read, but like you read books really well, but it's hard for you to understand what it is that you're reading. And so it's easier for you to get reading comprehension if I read the story, right, versus you reading it. Even though you're perfectly capable, it's more difficult because there's too much of taxing of the working memory as he's reading that he doesn't get anything out of what he's reading. So just a thought. And let me know, Shawana, if any of those were useful suggestions or a little more information on your child's age or something like that. Alrighty, scoot and go get ready for bed.
Can I go pet Dan?
Sure, go pet Dan.
Yay!
Dan is one of the many wildcats that we have around here. All right. So can grades be used alone or in part for progress monitoring data? The school will tell you yes. Whether you want to use it or not, that's up to you. Typically for progress monitoring data, that's determined in your IEP. So I'm not sure what the IEP says. So you need to look. And that's why it's so important. Make sure, read your IEP, read it, not just read it, but like read it critically. Read it like you're a teacher and you're got your red pen and you're wanting to mark it up. So read it with a very critical eye. And for the progress monitoring data, Jennifer, see, there's Dan. That's one of the wildcats. You're not supposed to bring that fluff ball in my house.
Oh, they're so cute.
Go away.
Okay, bye-bye.
You're distracting with the cute cat. All right, go. So for the progress monitoring data, like I said, see what the IEP says, and then that's what you need to go by. And if you don't want to use grades as part of the progress monitoring, which I wouldn't, partially because teachers can cheat a bit on the grades, right? Because they got some leeway and they can give some accommodations that aren't formally in your IEP. Also grades, remember under FAPE, that's not a reason to deny an IEP to a child with a disability. So I'm not sure why they would choose grades in particular as the standard for progress data. So Kate, you said you're not sure which label to advocate for. So now we're going back here to after developmental disability, where are we going? So if your child had developmental disability as a category for their IEP, typically, okay, not always, but typically, a child goes on to get reclassified into either autism or intellectual delay. So those would be the two I would read and look at first, and then maybe also look at speech language impairment, because I would say that's probably the third most common. So I would look at those three and then kind of, make decisions from there. And there's only so many categories. So, take time, read them all, and then make a decision on what you think fits and makes the most sense. Let's see. So Kate said that high functioning autism and ADHD. So yes, if your child has high functioning autism, then after developmental delay, they should move into their primary eligibility as autism. And I would fight to have it as autism and then secondary OHI for the ADHD. And that's really important to fight for, because normally, especially in the early years, there's so many issues that are sort of intertwined because both of those are neurodevelopmental delays. And I think I've written in the group a couple of times, kind of like this list. Matter of fact, I just put together an autism unit today. So the autism unit that I put together today, make sure that you check the units in the group. It's kind of a new thing for Facebook, and I like the concept, especially for our group. And I don't want to make them mandatory, because you can, instead of coming into the discussion group and where you can see what everybody's talking about, you land on these units and then you have to walk through them. I don't want to force people to walk through them. What I want to do is kind of use them as this sort of landing pad for ideas. And so that way I can make these units. And so I made like an autism unit today. I have a unit for anxiety. I have a unit for self-esteem and self-advocacy goals. I have a unit for ADHD, and I have one other unit in there for something. Anyways, I like the idea of these units because that way some of these resources that I've been giving in the group and are sort of blended into the group, you can find them all on the unit. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to put all the resources together in a unit, and that way you can just one place kind of shop and find everything right there. So I'm hoping we'll be able to make that work. Let's see. So Jeannie said, do you know of anyone who has been successful getting vision therapy paid for by the school system? Absolutely. And it says for convergency insufficiency, specifically, that's a bit of a tongue twister. And she said, that is my next fight, and I'm getting ready to take on New York. So good for you, because their standards are outdated. They are not in compliance with the guidance from the federal government, from OSEP. And I have written a blog post about that. Literally, matter of fact, here, let me go look and see, because it'll take me like 2 seconds. And I will give you the name of the blog post. Remember to, in the group, in the announcement post, I try to put everything into the announcement post. And I do that because, again, it's just sort of a long list, but everything is there. You just need to keep scrolling down. So let's see. So I have a blog post called Visual Impairment Covers Convergency Insufficiency 2. Because I would say convergency insufficiency is probably the most common out of all the vision impairment issues that I hear about. Following the convergency insufficiency is usually Arlen's syndrome. And I cover that also in another blog post, I think. Maybe not. Might have to work on that. I think I did on my old blog, but that was my personal blog, and I really don't want to send people over to my personal blog anymore. So maybe I need to move that over. But it's common to see these problems with vision issues. And when you do, just realize that the guidance from the federal government says any vision impairment problem is something that impairs the child in the educational environment is covered under visual impairments. So yes, convergency insufficiency should be considered a visual impairment and covered, and the child should be given vision therapy as a result of that. So hi V, how are you? And just to let you know, I'm kind of reading down through the list of comments here, guys. So V is saying, my son was transitioned into general ed from SDC, which I'm assuming is kind of like a resource kind of classroom, in second grade. Should an inclusion specialist be part of the process or transition? Could be. Do you think your child needs it, right? This is where you have to argue and make your case. Hey, my child needs additional help in the educational environment. Matter of fact, before you even agree to the placement into general education, I probably would have said, I want to do this on a trial basis, and I want an aide to go in as we're transitioning and we're doing this trial to go work with my child to help them understand what they're supposed to be doing and making sure they can follow along with what they need to be doing in the general education classroom. Now, my question is, what is your son's primary eligibility for special education? And are you sure he's going to be getting enough supports in the general education classroom? So those are two big questions that you will want answered. My other thought is, you will want to understand that, because often they'll try to tell you that they can't have an aide in the general education classroom. That's not true. They'll try to tell you that it's more restrictive. Okay, that's really not true, but it is more unusual, and it will bring additional attention to your child to have an aide in the general education classroom, but it's completely doable. And the general education classroom is absolutely the least restrictive environment, right? That LRE. But having an aide in the general education classroom is definitely still less restrictive than having him in a resource room for part of the day. So what you kind of come at is sort of this argument of, one, you need to prove that your child kind of needs this. And not even necessarily prove, like I said, just tell them, I at least want it temporarily as we work on transitioning to help my child, coordinate, learn the routine, and be able to fit into the flow of general education. So I would kind of approach it that way, and then hopefully they'll give you less flack, right? Because you're letting them know, I'm not expecting to have this help forever. I want it temporarily to help my child transition into the general education classroom. And I think they'll go for that. And yeah, I would definitely give that a try, V. All right, so you guys listed some states. So I'm assuming you're wanting information on the eligibility categories, and I'll give you that after we're done. I'll answer those, and I'll give you the link to your state's eligibility categories for special education. So Martha, hi Martha, she asks that, she said, I'm in Arizona, so am I. Really, this cold weather is killing me lately. And I know it's nothing like the rest of you, but still, for here, it's cold. All right, so she's struggling with the school doing an academic assessment. They say no need since there's no evidence is impacting his academic performance. Okay, well, so you mentioned doing an academic assessment. Are you really wanting testing for special education? Because it's not quite the same thing. And it involves more than just an academic assessment. So I need to know that information. But academics is not necessarily a reason that a child may need a 504 or an IEP, right? Because again, like I mentioned earlier, for FAPE clearly states a child can be passing from grade to grade and still be considered a child with a disability. So there's more involved, and we might have to get a little more specific with that. So Kate asked, can I choose two? So I'm sure she's talking about eligibility categories, and probably not all states recognize a secondary eligibility category. Some states you can have 3 eligibility categories. I know in Arizona, we have at least 2 because I had that for my children. A matter of fact, no, I'll take that back because Margaret had 3. So yes, you can definitely have, I mean, it's possible to have more than one eligibility. Now, here's the thing. By case law says, right, you don't have to have even the correct eligibility. Matter of fact, technically, the child doesn't even have to be categorized. What matters is the child receiving FAPE? That's what they care about, you know? So if your child has autism and you have a medical diagnosis of autism, they don't need an educational classification of autism to get services. What they need is just something, anything, it doesn't really matter, just the school acknowledging the child is a child with a disability, and therefore they should be applying services and accommodations as needed. So just something to consider. I mean, you don't have to have 2, you can have 2. I mentioned autism and the secondary is OHI. If you can get that, I would, because I think it's good and it helps the school to recognize and acknowledge that the ADHD impacts education, and it 100% impacts kids in the educational environment. There's no denying it. Matter of fact, sometimes for children with high functioning autism, it is more impactful than their actual issues with autism. So just something to consider. But again, most important thing, are they getting accommodations? Are they getting the modifications? Are they getting just whatever it is that they need to get FAPE in the educational environment? And that is the most important part. So Martha mentions that her son was diagnosed with autism level 1. So that's high functioning autism. And again, that's where the school may not recognize the autism, but it's clear in ways that are more subtle. And so again, Martha, one of the things you might want to look at is that brand new autism unit that I put together, because I wrote sort of this long intro part to that. That was really just a list of, you know, if you're going to request testing, these are the things that I would request to be tested. And it's because not only does it cover things that are typically seen in autism, but it covers a lot of the what they call comorbid, but it's really like co-occurring conditions, such as specific learning disabilities in written expression, specific learning disability in reading, specific learning disability in math. So, you know, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia. It covers ADHD, which is another common co-occurring condition with autism. And it seemed like there was one other thing that I covered in there. But it's a pretty comprehensive list, and I think it would help you out. All right. Let's see. So Jennifer said, how do you get emails between staff regarding my child? Oh, that's a good one. All right.
All children in bed for story time.
See, all children in bed for story time. I love Alexa. She bosses my children around for me.
This is a reminder. All children in bed for story time.
All children in bed for story time. All right. So, so emails between staff. All right. So what you need to do to get emails between staff is you want to look for, well, one, it depends on how long ago were the emails. If the emails were relatively recent, yes, Joseph, come here. This is my son, Joseph. Say hi, Joseph. All right, come here. Give me, don't show off. Come here and give me a hug. All right, Sicky, go away.
Can I have a story time?
Yeah. What?
Please.
All right. Anyways, so to get the emails, it depends on how old they are. So if the emails are rather old, it can be a little more difficult to get, but it's not impossible. You may have to do it under a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request. So that's one way. And again, each state has their own kind of like system to get that information. It's not very difficult. You will have to pay for it. So you do want to be specific in your request. Again, if you need help, let me know. It's fairly simple to find. Normally, you can just Google the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, so Freedom, so FOIA, and then list your state in the Google search bar, and normally it'll pop up. And if not, you can put in like, you know, FOIA, your state name, and then put in a sample letter. And you should turn up some information, and then you turn that into your State Department of Education, and they should find that information for you. If they're fairly recent, you may be able to get it under a FERPA request. And I have the letter to HUSC that shows email should be included in a FERPA request. Good night, James. Yeah, don't get too close to me. He's the one with the fever. All right. So the letter to HUSC has been, I posted it a few times in the group, but if you need it again, just make a post and let me know, and I will post the link to that guidance document or response document from OSEP again, and that'll help you out. So hi, Sue. Hi, Carrie. Thanks for joining. Hi, Holly. Let's see. Well, good. So I got good sound tonight. Yay. I've been working, I promise. I keep trying to improve this, I swear. Hi, Jackie. Good to see you. So Jeannie asks, can you have 2 classifications of disability stated on the IEP? So yes, I said that is possible. You can. It depends on your state. Some states, it's common that they'll give more than one classification. Other states, they do not. Again, it's not necessarily needed. Like according to case law, it's not required. but it is good to know. Yes. What, you're feeling left out? This is my sick daughter, Margaret. She's the one now with the fever.
I'm dying.
She's dying.
Yeah,
I'm actually a little dying.
You're a little dying. So Joseph's a little dying.
Yeah, but I'm gonna unplug the heater because I want to get warm.
Okay, yes, unplug the heater.
There we go.
All right. So, and then she said, is it more beneficial for me to have a learning disability listed for my daughter? But she also has a hearing impairment, which is not listed as her classification in New York. So depending on the significance of the hearing impairment, I would want it listed on there somewhere because it's an important aspect to what's hindering her education. And I think that's important to acknowledge. And so if it's not listed on the IEP, that might get missed, but hopefully not, right? But again, it's not required, but it's interesting that they wouldn't list that on your IEP, Jeannie. Let's see. I have a document posted from the Department of Ed. I'm good. All right, so Jeannie said she had one of the documents that I posted, so that's great. All right, is it Nia? N-Y-A? I hope I said that right. Anyways, hi, how are you? She said that she has a daughter and she's 3, and she was found eligible for an IEP under OHI, so that's a good start. And she has level 1 autism. The school said that she did not fit the criteria for autism. So this is sort of what I was mentioning earlier, right? You can have a child fit the medical diagnosis for autism, but because they are high functioning, they may not necessarily fit your state's classification for autism. Now, here's an interesting point. So technically, the federal law has supremacy, right? They go by state law because that's what they're told to do. But if your child fits under autism, under the federal statutes, they should still be classified under autism, right? And that's because federal law has supremacy over state, and state can't be more restrictive. So these are important points to make and something you may want to consider. So she was saying that the school did say she didn't fit the criteria. The school placed her into an inclusion state preschool. So I'm observing a non-categorical class tomorrow and was granted an IE for speech and language. So how do I push for autism category as a primary and OHI secondary? So again, you want to look at what is your state's definition for these eligibility categories. That's the most important part. And then if they don't fit under state, do they fit under the federal? Because again, federal law has supremacy. And then we can talk more too about what is your state's definitions. And I can find that link for you, and then we can kind of go from there. Thanks, Joseph, for the hand puppet. Now get. So Nat said, we are dealing with a lazy eye and a crossed eye. So yes, as long as it impairs the vision when a child is trying to read or do something else in the educational environment, it should still be considered a visual impairment, because the way the guidance is written, there's no qualifier for it. So again, if you read that post about vision impairment covers convergency insufficiency too, it explains that, and it shows you what that guidance is and where you can find it. Let's see. So Jennifer said, some states, most accommodations are not being given, but school states they must be because he has good grades. Baloney. That doesn't mean anything. Your son saying that he's not getting his accommodations is what's important. Okay, that's really weird. So have you asked the teacher, Jennifer, if they are giving the accommodations? I mean, are they lying? I have to say, I'm kind of curious. And if so, and they're lying about it, then it's your son's word against the teacher's word. And I guarantee you, every time the school is going to believe the teacher. So there's no good way to make sure, unfortunately, that they are being given, where it's not just his word versus her word. I'm not sure. I'll have to give that a little bit of thought. So Carly, it's a great suggestion. We're about to go into kindergarten next year, and we will be discussing general education in June. Great that you're moving into general education classrooms, right? You want to get in and start inclusion, if it's possible, as early as possible. Now, here's the thing. Your child may be able to move into the general education classroom early on, but as they get older and the demands of work become more, you want to watch two things. One is the school does not try to take away your child's IEP. I see that happen a lot. They try to take it away right before kindergarten. They try to take it away again right before 3rd grade. They try taking it away again right before 6th grade, or right before 9th grade. And especially right before 9th grade. They try to scare you and tell you that an IEP isn't recognized by colleges. It's not true. They also try to scare you and say you need to move them to a 504. But the reason they're doing that is because they don't want to supply transition services. That's pretty consistently what I see. Now, I'm sure if you talk to school people, they'll tell you something completely different, and they'll tell you that they don't do that kind of thing. But again, it's not what I see and it's not what I hear. So I can only tell you what I see and hear, and that's what I see and hear the most often. And it's a terrible thing to do because these kids usually need these transition services and they're just not getting them. So you want to get in and, like I said, keep the IEP, get in there and get into the general education classroom as soon as you can. Then you want to see if they can continue being successful in the general education classroom by the time they hit 3rd grade. So you'll know by the end of 3rd grade if that's going to be possible. And you just want to keep an eye out for how things are working, because it's really in 3rd grade you have that really rough transition from where the teacher is responsible for everything. The teacher is responsible for, you know, like chunking up assignments, and the teacher is responsible for making sure the work gets done and stuff is done in class and there's no homework going home, and you know, and then like all that just magically changes in 3rd grade. Why? I don't know, but it does. And then I noticed one interesting thing is that children are never, and I don't know why, explicitly taught study skills and how to be a good student in kindergarten, 1st grade, or 2nd grade. So they're not prepared by the time they hit to 3rd grade. And a lot of the students, especially those with disabilities, they don't just learn, you know, they have to be explicitly taught these things. And so if you do have a little one, this is a great time to start working on those executive functioning skills and teaching them how to be a good student and how to keep up with their things and how to keep organized. So the earlier you can start, the better. Let's see. So V says autism. I don't think the special day class, the SDC, special day class, is the right fit. I am concerned that general education is too difficult. Well, and I was denied RSP. So what did the school list on the prior written notice for the reason for denial? And then the general education, why do you think it's too difficult? Because you know, like would an aid then solve the problem? And if so, then maybe that's what you should fight for, right? So there's a couple of things there, V, that you can look at. Let's see. So Kate said, would it trouble you if a VP stated during first meeting that hopefully your son, who has high functioning autism and ADHD, will do so well he eventually won't need an IEP? A little bit, because I think that's extremely optimistic. Also, how would he know that? Because he doesn't really know your child. And then the third thing that concerns me is that both of those are neurodevelopmental disorders. So even though they may improve over time, they don't just go away. You know, so my son James, who you saw, out of my surviving quadruplets, he is by far the highest functioning of my 3 children. And when I took him to go and have his last neuropsychological evaluation, I had to point out to the neuropsychologist and say, hey, you know, my son has autism. He is very high functioning. Here's how you can see his autism still, right? And, you know, for him, one of the ways in which you can see it is as an adult, if I'm in the room with him, well, okay, not me because he knows me, but say if you were in the room with him, he wouldn't look at you in the eye. He would look at you for just a moment and he would be like, hi, my name is James. And then after that, like all of his eyes would be over here. He won't look at you anymore because you're too close. So it's very subtle now. You know, he misses social cues. He misses some other little things. But what you're seeing and what I explained to her, I go, this is a culmination of a lot of work that, you know, I put into him, a lot of work his dad did, a lot of work his therapist did, that we kind of buffed and rounded out the rough edges of James's most autistic behavior, right? It doesn't mean he doesn't have autism anymore. It just means it's not as noticeable, right? It doesn't change mentally how he sees things. Out of my 3 children, he has the worst fluid reasoning scores. So that's, you know, kind of your brain's ability to kind of novelly look at stuff and then come up with a solution to a problem, kind of pulling together the information you already know. That's common in children with autism. They usually have low fluid reasoning. Their brains kind of, I call it, get stuck in a rut. You know, they only want to do things one way. And he's the worst out of my 3. And I find that really interesting because cognitively, he's the highest functioning, but it's his weakness. And that's his autism showing, essentially. So no, it doesn't go away. It just means that you've worked really hard and you've buffed out the worst of the behavior. That's all. So yeah, I just think it shows a lack of understanding of what autism is and what ADHD is, what the 2 of them together are, and how that impacts the child in learning. So let's see. Coco said, I don't know about this. What, Coco? So Martha says, we now have a 504 with OT services, according to 2 meetings reviewing data. So they have a 504, so you're making some progress. And that's good because a 504, even though it's not necessarily where you want to go, maybe, because maybe you would like to get an IEP, but a 504, there are rights and protections, and it shows that the school acknowledges your child is a child with a disability. So that's good. You're like heading in the right direction. Let's see. Anto says, if your child is homeschooled and has a service plan, can a parent still request an evaluation from the school, so speech, OT, and PT, or would they need to be enrolled in public school with an IEP? So Anto, I wrote a post recently called Child Find, and that's exactly what it addresses. So Child Find is basically, okay, so by law, a school district is required to find all children with disabilities within their jurisdiction. It's the law. And again, I have that in the blog post, and I can post it here again in a little bit. And also, I think, did I write that? I try to keep them, like I said, all of them in the announcement post. And I wrote that one recently, and I may not have put it in there yet. But you can also always find all of these on AESA's blog page. So do be aware, all of the posts are there. But you want to use Child Find. And yes, under Child Find, you can have the school, they'll do a screening first, because that's all Child Find requires the school to do, is to screen. And screening is not the same as an evaluation. And depending on how high functioning your child is, they may or may not pass the screening. If they do pass the screening, then the school is going to go, well, we're done. We've done our obligation. There's nothing else for us to do. If they don't pass the screening, then they'll say, hey, you need to come back and we're going to do evaluations. Now, here's my 2 cents on this. The bar for a child to qualify for services from the educational standpoint, educational therapy, is so significant that the child would have qualified for medical therapy a long time ago. And also the objectives between educational and medical therapy are very different. Educational therapy, all they care about is that your child is functional in the educational environment. Whereas medical therapy says, we want your child to be whole across all environments, right? It's a big difference. And I would look to exercise my child's access or Medicaid or whatever state benefits your child may have and get therapy that route. Not only that, when you get medical therapy, your child gets therapy one-on-one. Your child also will, it's like if your child needs therapy, it's just between you and the doctor. Like you go to your pediatrician and you're like, hey, my child needs an evaluation for OTPT speech. And then your doctor goes, oh, okay, I'll write you the referral. And then you're off and on your way. Whereas, for the school, you got to wait, and there's like 30 days, and it's 15 days here, and 90 days there, and 60 days. I mean, it takes forever. So I find the process much faster to go through the medical route. And if you're already homeschooling, I wouldn't even bother with the school unless you just absolutely had to. So some things to think about there, Anto. And, I would urge you to go and get medical therapy if you can. Let's see. So I have Susan here, and Susan said, if the IEP is taken away at kindergarten, oh, I hate when that happens. And now in 6th grade, they're willing to give a 504, but they refuse to give an SLP to a hearing auditory processing kid. What is the recourse? So the recourse is quite simple. One, you need to make sure that it's in your prior written notice, the reason why they denied the SLP. So that's the first thing. Then your next recourse is to ask for an IEE, an independent educational evaluation. So you can do that up until the evaluation is 1 year old. So if it's less than a year old, you can ask for an IEE. And in my blog post that I have under special education terms to know, I think it's in the first one. If not, it's probably in the second one, that I define all the information for an IEE and it's, kind of explain everything and how that works. And you do want to be aware that if you do ask for an IEE, then the school only has 2 options. One is they're going to give you that IEE. The second option is they have to take you to due process. Those are their only choices. It's yes or due process, and there's nothing in between. So if they take you to due process, it is their burden to prove that they did a thorough evaluation and, kind of like completely looked at everything for all suspected disabilities. And I say suspected, that's what the law says, all suspected disabilities. So, Susan, I would say it's something to think about is potentially an IEE, and you do want to look at your prior written notice and make sure that it was acknowledged that you did ask for that, and then what was the school district's reason why it was denied, especially if you have any kind of medical evidence proving that there is a hearing or auditory processing delay issue. So let's see. Evaluation and assessment. Okay, so Martha asked, and Sue, I did answer your question. I hope you heard the answer. Martha asked, evaluations and assessments are 2 different things, right? Yes, they are two different things. So, and that's why I try to be careful the words that I use, because a lot of people get the terminology mixed up. I can be guilty of that sometimes too, but I try to watch it. So assessments are like screenings, and screenings by law are not evaluations. The school district can screen your children till the cows come home. They don't need your consent. They don't need to tell you they're doing it. Nothing. They can screen them all day long. And so, and I believe I have put that law in the group, but if not, I'll drop it here. Because we just came across this recently where a school refused to conduct part of an evaluation that was requested and signed off for, but instead, because they were like, hey, we did the screening and so the child doesn't need it. And the screening is not an evaluation, and you sign consent for an evaluation, and that is completely what should have been done. So, and I told them, I'm like, you need to go back and tell them you want a prior written notice and you want explanations for why it was denied. Would you go break up the cat fight, please?
I'm in the middle of it.
So, anyways, so screenings are, again, it is not an evaluation. Whereas if your child gets an evaluation, then the school has to come to you and get your consent. They are never allowed to conduct evaluations without your consent. And that has happened, and it's against the law when they do. So just be aware. But again, for screenings, they can screen them all the time and never even tell you. And often that does happen. A lot of the state assessments and other things, those are screeners. They're not really assessments, they're screeners. And they're taking that data and the school is using it, and they're trying to decide, who is sort of on the bubble and who might need more help, and then they'll throw them into their RTI process. So it's also important to be aware of when schools are doing this, because if they are thrown into the RTI process, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and RTI can sometimes solve, an issue that a child might be having. But if you see the child in RTI for a while and then they're not making progress, they're not changing, because RTI is response to intervention, and there's a tier 1, a tier 2, and a tier 3. If the child's moved into tier 1, they shouldn't be there more than a grading period, and then they should move into tier 2, and then they shouldn't be in there more than a grading period where they're not making progress, and then they should be moved to tier 3. Now, all of that said, I've seen children spend entire years in, say, like 2 years in an RTI level 2. That should never happen, ever. And then at any point, as the parent, you can request testing, and I highly urge you to do so. And there are a couple of pieces of guidance that OSUP has put out. Sorry. Anyways, they put out guidance, and in the guidance, they state very clearly that parents have the right to ask for testing, and the schools can't deny or delay a child getting tested while they have the child in the RTI process. So Martha, you said that you requested an evaluation, and if you did and you were told no, the school needs to supply you with a prior written notice explaining why they're refusing to test your child. And then after that, you have a couple of options. One is to exercise your medical benefits and get private testing, which I highly encourage you to do anyways. The second thing that you can do is just take the school to due process. So that's completely something that you can do. And Kate did explain what RTI is, response to intervention. So response to intervention is a common technique that many schools use to kind of address students on the bubble. They're behind, but they're not really far behind. So, you know, these are things that you can do. Hi, Lynn. Nice to see you. Nita says, I wish you were in Canada, but I read all your messages. Well, thank you, Nita. I kind of wish I was in Canada too. You got some neat stuff, but I have to say, I'm really liking Arizona in the wintertime versus Canada. Sorry, but I'm just not into ice hockey, and it's really cold there. So does anybody else have any comments? Because this is about an hour long at this point, and I didn't know if there was anything else anyone wanted me to address before we're done. Let's see. So Martha says he was in RTI level 1 and then 2 and now out of RTI. So what the school is implying is that your child needed help. We put him in RTI 1. That wasn't enough. We moved him to RTI 2. And then he did so well with the extra help that he got out of RTI 2. He's now fine. And he's out of RTI. So I guess my question to you, Martha, is that true? Do you see that? Do you feel like that's true also? And then Kate says, on meds, my high-functioning autistic child with ADHD is viewed as a model student. Absolutely. I'm not surprised in the least. And she said, if my child is going to be evaluated, should I send him unmedicated? He's more like a Tasmanian tiger off the meds. You know what? This is kind of bad, but yes, I would. Here's the problem with the school. Basically, unless the school sees a problem, they're like, hey, there's no problem existing. But that's not true. You know, just because he's medicated doesn't still mean that he doesn't have attention issues. They're just not as severe. It doesn't mean he doesn't have sensory issues. It doesn't mean he doesn't have social issues. It doesn't mean that he understands the social nuances, right, of pragmatic speech, of figurative language. These are all important things that he needs to know in order to get along well with others. James, again, my, Aspie kid who's hyperlexic, that boy had no social filter. It just like thought here, out the mouth. Nothing stopped it. Like, I heard so much hard truth. Really, it was tough. In any case, though, it took a while to teach him these things that, there's a thing called a social filter, that you probably, everything that you think doesn't need to come out of your mouth. So these are things that could be addressed and should be addressed because, let's think about it in a realistic manner, right? It's unlikely it would be able to hold down a job for any reasonable amount of time, right? He would get fired. He would say something stupid or insensitive to the wrong person, and then they're like, well, you're fired. Goodbye. So it's important to learn these social nuances that we have and that our children with autism understand these social nuances. So, one of the ways to help make sure that happens is, and I don't even necessarily say no medication, but maybe like under medicating him a bit, not give him quite as much. Have him kind of, where you change the dosing schedule so that it's trailing off as he's testing. So just something to think about. Let's see. Hi, Jane. Sorry you missed me earlier. I'm going to try, as long as we have a reasonable turnout, to continue to do these every Wednesday. And so right now it looks like a fairly good time because this group is a national group, right? So we hit all across everywhere. And I do have some people who are in England and in Ireland and Canada. And so I'm going to try to do these at not too late for the East Coast, essentially, and then not too early, I'm hoping, for those on the West Coast, so that, I can kind of catch people a little bit in between. So hopefully your kids can go down, and for those on the West Coast, and you can at least catch the last half hour, and then maybe those on the East Coast, you can catch the first half hour, and then maybe you have to go, or you drink a little coffee and stay up with us for a little bit, or wine or something else. Kind of unwind after a hard day, right? So Martha says, I need an advocate. Martha, you are the advocate. You can do it. All of you can do it. I completely believe you can do it. I learned, you can learn. Now, does that mean you can learn everything that I know immediately? No, it takes time, right? But I'm here to help you learn what you need to know immediately in order to go and deal with your school, okay? So whatever it is that you need, let me know, and I will get you that information so that you can deal and let the school have it. So Martha says, I see growth and there are still concerns, and we can discuss that more in the group. So just make a post and I will help address that and, you know, give you what resources I can find and what I have. Jane was asking about how often do you go live. I'm going to try to do it every Wednesday night, because when I did a poll and I asked the group, when is the best time, this time slot essentially is what came up. That, you know, kind of won by quite a few extra votes compared to the next time. So I was going to try this for a little bit. And again, as long as people are attending and people are interacting, I'll continue to do it. You know, I want to use my time wisely. I don't have scads of time. I know it may seem like it because I'm in the group a lot or I respond often or quickly, but that's often because I have my phone handy and I get a notification anytime anybody posts anything into the group. So I try to respond fairly quickly to the group, but you know, I do have my surviving quadruplets. I do homeschool them. We have therapy. I started up a nonprofit. I have a conference that I'm hosting in June, that kind of the nonprofit is hosting in June. I have an academy for special needs children that I'm putting together, that's going to kick off in the summer. And I say academy, it's more like homeschooling classes for children with special needs. And I got a bunch of other things kind of going on and rolling. So I'm very busy, and I've been asked to speak, you know, like one conference, and I was trying to get in to speak at another. So I got a lot going on, and I feel like as long as my time is being productively used, I'll do these as long as you guys are enjoying it and are being interactive. So, you know, I just want to use my time as wisely as I can. So Kate asked, am I going to post this so it can be rewatched? Absolutely. Just like last week's is in the group too. So you can scroll through and you'll find last week's also. Let's see. So is there a place that you can donate? Yes. So AESA, Arizona Exceptional Students Association, is my nonprofit. And you can go there and donate, and I can post a link to the group. And thank you so much. If you're interested in donating, I appreciate it. By donating, it really helps me because well, one of the things that I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to set up some kind of membership, and that way I'm going to be able to offer my services inexpensively, because I want to kind of, I don't know, like function under the Walmart principle, right? I just want to be inexpensive and accessible. But, you know, I need some compensation essentially. So I would rather kind of do these group things and offer group help, and everybody give me $10, right? Instead of one person paying me, you know, $60 to $150 an hour, which is how much most advocates in my area charge. So, you know, I want to be able to feel like I'm able to offer help to people who is, you know, that single mom with a special needs child, who's working a minimum wage job. I want to be able to help that person and have them not feel like my help and my services are beyond their reach. So let's see. Martha asked, where in Arizona you're located? I'm on the west side. Yeah. So I live in west side of Phoenix, near 51st Avenue in Thomas. And that's, I don't know if that means anything to you, but those who live in town, that should tell you something. I'm near Maryville, and I'm really excited because my nonprofit, AESA, part of the reason I formed it is because there aren't enough advocates locally, and because in particular, the west side in which I live on, I see a lot of people needing help here. And many of them are Hispanic. They do not understand what their rights are. So I've been able to help some of the people that kind of my husband has quietly steered my way. And the nonprofit, as we get up and running, I'm hoping to be able to do a lot more. I'm really excited by the Reed Scholarship. Actually, this side you can see behind me is one of the programs that I'm wanting to run. And the Reed Scholarship is going to be modeled after SELF, which is a special education legal defense fund. I did that right. So for those of you in Connecticut, you are super lucky. You have SELF, and they supply grants, and they pay out $5,000 to parents who are chosen to help them retain an attorney to represent them in due process. So I'm wanting to replicate that program here in Arizona. I'm going to call it the Reed Scholarship. And then what I want to do is, given a little more time and I can get a little more traction going, I'm going to change Arizona Exceptional Students Association to American Exceptional Student Association. So the scale of the group matches the scale, or the scale of my nonprofit, sorry, matches the scale of this group. And then I would like to be able to form additional AESA organizations in every state so that parents can get advocacy that they need, along with supplying a Reed Scholarship to all the various states. Connecticut's had an amazing thing going on there, and I think that really needs to be replicated elsewhere. And I'm hoping to help make that happen in the not too distant future. So let's see. So Julie was saying she's in Arizona too. Hopefully you're warmer than I am. I'm cold here. Martha said she's in Mesa, and her son's in Scottsdale Unified. I hear problems in Scottsdale. It's really weird. I tend to hear problems in Deer Valley and in Santan, and then Scottsdale is the third, and then Paradise Valley. So those are where I hear more complaints. It's kind of interesting. That's very funny. So apparently Jane and I happen to know each other. How weird is that? What a small world, right? Let's see. So Julie was asking, do you have groups here in Arizona for families to help guide them? Actually, I do. So again, I have the Arizona Exceptional Students Association, right, AESA, and that's my nonprofit. And with it, and I'm able to supply advocacy help. Also, I run several other Facebook groups here locally, including one, Phoenix West Valley Homeschoolers. I run a special needs homeschooling group. I started a special needs parenting support and advice group. So I have several things going on right now. I'm looking at planning a homeschooling moms get together. So we're planning that for March 2nd. And then I'm looking to see about adding in like special needs moms get-togethers here on the west side. So I'm hoping that will be successful. And I'm looking to launch that soon also. One of the churches here locally to me is allowing us to use their facilities. And they, want me to pay $25 an hour to use their facilities, which is completely reasonable. So I just need to figure out how to get the money together to make sure I can pay for these activities. But I'm working on it. So plans are being laid and more work is being done. But I'm hoping to get more and more things here rolled out soon. Let's see. Okay, it's not a can-do attitude, man. I'm just like a wing and a prayer. It's a wing and a prayer all the time. It's how I live my life, a wing and a prayer. So good, Kate. I'm glad you feel more prepared for your meeting next week. And if you need any other help, please let me know. Reese, hi. Hello from Kansas. I've been through there. several times. I've traveled back and forth across the country. Let me think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, 6 total trips back and forth across the country. And each time it's very interesting. And I like looking at all the towns that we go through. Martha said, yes, we'd love to get together. So that would be great. I am trying to find, so the ASA Academy, which again it will be a summer program partially. And I'm hoping to be able to expand it. So I know for sure that I have a facility here in the southwest area of town, and I'm looking for an area up in the northwest. I need a facility essentially to host my, basically for the academy, I have 4 special education teachers who are going to work with me this summer to teach classes, along with an art teacher, a math teacher, and I have 2 music therapists. So I'm really excited about all that I have going on, like all of these professionals who are willing to work with us. And I'm wanting to put together something that essentially is like OutSchool, where we offer these classes, and they're going to be a lot of fun, right? And so that's the plan and what I'm hoping to do. And I know for sure that I'm going to do this in the southwest part of the valley. I'm hoping to find a location up in the northwest part of the valley. And then hopefully next year, I will be able to offer it in the east side of the valley too. But I'm hoping the programs that I have going on in the west will be able to go on throughout the year, that it won't be just a summer thing, that the interest will be there for us to continue throughout the entire year. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the interest is. Yes, the power of prayer is mighty. I've been very blessed because there's been several times I've had the right people show up to help me when I've been desperately in need of help, including putting together this nonprofit. And we've been very, very blessed with help and people kind of coming forward to help us with this nonprofit. So I'm very excited about what all I've got going on right now. Yes, Julie, I do need to get more known. And when you know how to make that happen, I would love to hear it. So yes, I mean, it's slowly getting out there, but is it such a thing as being too well known? I mean, there probably is. But I don't want me to be well known. I want my nonprofit to be well known. I just happen to do a lot of the work for the nonprofit for the moment. So Kate said, I'm in my son's classroom. Oh, that's good. How did you pull that off? And it said, one kid has an 8, so it's pretty obvious that he's not getting proper instruction. What do I do? He's in general ed, but he's clearly lacking. What can you do? Honestly, there's nothing you can do unless you can happen to get a hold of the parent. But then you still have to be careful, because if you're employed by the school district, right, they could just very well fire you, and that may happen. There's been several cases where I know aides have spoken up when they've seen something happening, and they have told parents, and when that's happened, they've lost their job. So if you bring it to the attention of the staff, will they do anything about it? So I guess it depends on what your relationship is with the staff, and if you think they'll do anything about it. And again, they have to be careful, because the way teaching works, they made such a big deal about getting rid of teachers who have tenure. And I can kind of see that, right? But then you kind of went to the opposite end, where no teacher has any kind of job security. They only get a contract for a given school year, and then that's it. And then for any reason, for no reason, they'll just go, well, it's been great working with you, bye, and it's just that simple. And then you're gone. They just won't renew your contract. That's what happens. And so even my husband, who had worked pretty aggressively to advocate for some of his students, he was a bit concerned whether he might be let go of the school year, like at the end of the school year. And, thankfully it doesn't look like he will be, but we were fully prepared, you know, kind of like brushing up the resume and stuff and looking at job fairs just in case. So you really have to be careful, you know, about that kind of thing. Let's see. Oh, so Kate said she's just a volunteer. Well, I was going to say, so the only other problem is they may lock you out of the classroom. So that's another possibility. I mean, what I'm saying is there may be no good way for you to intervene. And I'm sure, like you know, I feel this way, is I feel frustrated when I see things like this happening because you're wanting to intervene, but you just can't. And it's tough. So Julie says, my child was in special education and high school was terrible when graduation came. There was no guidance to mainstreaming out of high school to the real world. There should have been transition services. This is what I was talking about earlier. Transition services should have been offered in transition. I mean, like, that's the whole purpose of transition services, is that they're kind of educating you on whatever it is that you're wanting to do next. Is it college? Then they're supposed to be helping you, like, apply for colleges and to do the things that you need to do to get ready to go to college. And if it's not college and some kind of trade or career, then they're supposed to be helping you kind of move to that, whatever, you know, whatever it is that's of interest. And so that's actually really disappointing, Julie, that that doesn't seem to have happened. And then, so you're saying you're grateful that Job Corps got him up and going. So that is really good. And Job Corps is a great program if, you know, your child is willing to do the work that's involved. So that's great that it worked out. And yeah, I would say, Julie, I wish I had known sooner, or you had found my group sooner, because I completely could have helped you get transition services. I hate to hear that, but it's something I hear often, that people are denied transition services. So Julie said, I think they might have talked to him, but he was at a 5th grade level. Well, and that does bring up another question too, because see, and kind of another problem. So once a child turns 18, right, unless you have gotten guardianship of them, they are in charge of their own educational services, everything. So that's something to be aware of. But, you know, until then, you have control. And then if they had been talking to him, that still should have been brought up in an IEP meeting, because it's part of the services by law they're required to offer. And it sounds like in your case that didn't happen. Well, and that's awesome that he's a medical assistant and he drives. That's great. It's great that he's a good driver. I'm concerned. I'm afraid none of my children will be able to drive. But anyways, it is good that he found something that he could do, and hopefully he enjoys it. I know my husband's not teaching. One of his favorite, like, part-time jobs to pick up in the summer, as weird as this sounds, is pizza delivery. He does pizza delivery often for Papa John's because they'll rehire him. And yeah, he really likes doing pizza delivery and driving. I find that funny, but you know, he enjoys it. So Kate says, a friend of mine has a kiddo in a class, kindergarten, autism. The teacher is a poor match. Yeah, unfortunately, that does happen. And says things like, I have 3 other kids with ASD and he is just not listening. Is there a way to request a change in teachers? There's been a student teacher and he's been doing great, while the incompatible teacher is out temporarily. So it's really hard sometimes to get the school to change classes. The first thing you can do is just be nice and ask. You may luck out, be able to ask, and they'll just go, okay, and then they'll move your child. If they don't, then it can be more of a problem. She's supposed to be out here. So just leave her be. Have my other son. All right, so, and this is another problem too. You can't ask for certain staff, right? So then the next route you may have to go is to explain what the issue is that you're having with the teacher. And that could go okay to really poorly, depending on how well you write the letter. So you want to write it as tactfully as you can and just say, this doesn't seem to be a good match. I'm not sure that it's working well. The teacher is, saying that, she has other kids who are needing her time, and my child is taking up too much of her time in comparison. So this may be a great time to go, you know what? We could really use an aide in the class and see how that flies. And then when they're like, no, and they're like, well, can we go work with this, other person and see if that works? Then another thought is too, it sounds like she may not just have autism. She has that executive functioning ADHD issue. And that would explain a lot of the reason why, a lot of the reason why he is not listening. It's a very common comorbid condition to autism, and it would make a lot of sense to me. And so children who have ADHD, or just like a really impaired executive functioning, tend to have that auditory short-term memory issue. Like they literally just don't hear you. I mean, there's been times I've called my kids and like no one hears anything. I joke around and I'm like, I repeat myself at least twice all day, every day to pretty much everyone in my house because they all have ADHD. So, I mean, it's a common thing, and it's well known and well documented that this is a known problem. And they work much better with, visual schedules, visual cues. So maybe that's something even you could suggest to the teacher. Also, there's guidance out about how teachers can deal with children who have ADHD, and so maybe that would be helpful too. You can ask for teacher training. That's getting a little late in the school year for that, but that's another possibility. So, again, these are all potential things that you can ask for. So Laura says, I know the only OT the school will provide and how it affects the student in the educational setting. However, my second grader only gets to work on cutting with scissors. What other can fall under OT in school? Oh my gosh, there's so much. There is so much OT does in the educational setting. It's crazy. I mean, they handle everything essentially. So, Laura, it depends on what grade is your child in, what state are you in. I probably can find, most states have an OT PT guide in the educational environment. So I may be able to find your state guide, and if not, I have other state guides. And essentially, what one state does for OT PT services in the educational environment, pretty much all states do. So you can read that and read through there and kind of get an idea of all the things that they can do. But it also depends on what your child needs. Obviously, they need fine motor skills, so they need to start working on handwriting. So again, how old is your child and what grade? So Kate, yes, I agree. The teacher probably is overwhelmed. And that's what I was telling you earlier about asking for an aide, like a paraprofessional for one-on-one. And yeah, no one hears anything. Oh, unless it's a candy wrapper, right? If I'm unwrapping candy, all of a sudden everybody's got great hearing. If I call somebody's name though, they don't hear me.
Whoever is still up must go to bed.
All right. So teacher training, yes, something to consider. Teacher training will help. like I said, there's several things you could potentially do or ask for. But again, it's getting a little late in the year for teacher training, so I don't know if they'll have enough time for it to be beneficial to your daughter or your son, or no, sorry, your friend's son. So, so Laura said second grade in Arizona. Oh, well, that explains it. So we've been doing private OT for 6 years. So private OT is medical OT. I would continue with medical OT. Medical OT can do everything, from what I can tell. Medical OT can do everything that educational OT can do except for handwriting. Now, somebody did tell me recently that they have a medical OT who will work on handwriting, but that's the first time I've ever heard of that. Normally, medical OTs will flatly refuse because it's not allowed. And then potentially social groups. So again, it's not actually in the medical side that you can't get it. It's just, it can be hard to find. I know, because again, I'm in Arizona. I've only seen a few social groups. Usually they're on the east side. So if you are on the east side, then you're fine. If you're like me on the west side, not so much. And I don't really know of any good OT social groups. So, and again, too, it depends on what are your child's issues. Why are they getting OT in the first place? You know, does the child have autism? Then there could be several things the OT could be working on. Yes, Julie, the aid absolutely can be used in the general education or mainstream classroom. And I was talking earlier about least restrictive environment. And again, if you go look on, was it special education terms to know either part 1, part 2, or part 3. Y'all had a lot of terms you wanted to know. So I hope I defined them all well. But I know one of them that I did discuss was the least restrictive environment. And so you can do that. Yes, social groups can be done in OT because there are some social aspects to OT along with speech. Both can be done in social group settings. So speech, you're then working on figurative language. And OT, social group, you're then working on more of kind of like role playing, like how do we go about introducing ourselves? How do we go about making friends, right? It's not about speech production or understanding the verbal cues involved in social aspect. It's more of that scripted, like, well, okay, well, now we come up and we talk to people. Good night, Joseph.
Bye, guys.
Go to bed, kid. Like I was saying, so it's more like that modeling, right? Like how I taught my children, because they have autism, how to go and interact with others was that, you know, we don't run up and hug them. We don't run up and get into their personal space. We walk up to them and we put out our hand and we're like, hi, my name is James. Nice to meet you. What's your name? That's great. What do you like to do? What would you like to go play? You know, I kind of gave him a script of what he needed to do. And that can be practiced with OT. Yes, you can ask for that in schools. Schools may be more used to having speech, but it doesn't really matter. If your child needs help in social skills, any kind of social skills that, you know, they might be needing, the school should be addressing. And in my new unit I made for autism, I wrote a post, a blog post on autism in the educational setting. And in there, in particular for autism, I explained how important it is for children to be socially fluent, and gave some journal articles for, I think, kind of proving that point. So I think you'll like that. That'll be handy. Kate, depending on your child's disability and your state, can your child qualify for state Medicaid, because I thought, see, this is where I tell you people, I forget states, so I'm terribly sorry. But depending on your child's disability, you may be able to qualify for state Medicaid. And if you make too much money, many states have an income waiver. So that's another possibility too. And if you do not know if your state offers an income waiver or what kind of income waivers are available for your state, there is a great website to go to, and I can post that too. So Kate said Virginia. So I can look it up and I can post that information for you. Social goals. Yes. Social fluidity. You know, I haven't ever heard it that way, but I like that. So yeah, it would be kind of like the social skills group, right? I mean, it's a matter of we need to practice our social skills and how we're going to make friends. How are we going to get along with people? How are we going to kind of fit in with everybody else? I know for like employment purposes, again, it's very important we try to work with our children so that, you know, I hate to say like they're socially acceptable, but it's kind of important because if your child isn't reasonably socially acceptable, then nobody's going to want to hire them. And if they do, they probably won't be employed for terribly long. I know my daughter Margaret, she has like favorite clothes that she likes to wear. And even at 11, I have to break her out of this habit of wearing the same clothing every day. I turn around and she got it back. She has it back on again. She pulls it out of the dirty clothes to wear it again. Margaret. She's sitting on the sofa making faces at me. But it's because she knows it's true. So we did a compromise, right? And what we did is that she has a Friday shirt, because Friday is considered fun day around here. So she has a Friday shirt, and her Friday shirt is always the same shirt. But I'm good with that because you know what? You got the whole rest of the time to wash it. So it's clean, so that by the time Friday comes around, we have a clean shirt to put on. And it makes her happy. She likes that predictability.
Winnie the Pooh shirt?
Yes, your Winnie the Pooh shirt.
That's too big for me now.
So it's too small for you now. You are too big. So you're going to have a new Friday shirt.
No.
So that's what we do. Now we designate a new shirt for a given day. But it helps to keep her clean because she can't wear dirty clothes. She would smell. And so that's not practical for hiring and for, working in a job. So Kate said there's a long wait list there. Kate, you should move to Arizona. No long wait list here. Might be worth it. I will tell you guys, I've moved 3 states. So, now that we're in Arizona, we have better services and better help here than I've had in any other state that I've lived in. So, something to think about, right? But just so you know, that's kind of how it works. And I don't know, sometimes if you can up and relocate, it makes it worthwhile to do if you can. Let's see. Yeah, well, I try to meet her where she is, right? But that's what I'm saying. It's good to compromise, but it needs to be reasonable, and it needs to be something that would be socially acceptable. So, that was sort of what we came up with, that she can get, clean clothing on, but it makes her happy because she has designated clothes for certain days. So anyways, this has run long. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. I need to get going because the last of my children are heading off to bed. And we will do this again next Wednesday. So you guys have a good night. Thank you so much for being here and interacting with me. I very much appreciate it. And I will see you next Wednesday. So have a good night. Bye. All right.
One of the viewers actually has his name Morgan.